So it's quite clear to me the current world is in chaos. Looking at the new M2 is making people angry when it should be inducing uncontrollable giggles and stirring up your lunch a bit. The new IONIQ 6 looks like a clash between an Infiniti J30 and the now expired Mercedes CLS, while the GTR has been shocked by the whole landscape and looks the same now as it did 15 years ago. Wait, but the IONIQ 6 is different, right? Yes, it has an excuse, of course. It's all in the name of aerodynamics. The IONIQ 6 is playing the range game. But what's the M2's excuse then? We'll save that for a different video. Oh, is that too loud? For the sake of the video, I've turned on active sound design. Here we go. It was a little bit more intense. There were a few more options in the Genesis GV60 as far as that active sound design goes. You could actually create an artificial engine sound. Here, you just get to choose how loud the sound is. You don't get to choose what the sound is. This is the IONIQ 6, available in both rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. Which is exciting for a number of reasons. The biggest thing, one of my favorite things, probably my favorite thing about the IONIQ 6 is that if we go into the menus here, I am able to choose as one of my drive modes, as my custom drive mode, along with the steering feel, the throttle sensitivity, is whether or not I power exclusively the rear wheels, turn it into a rear-wheel drive car, but you can also put it into auto all-wheel drive or full-time all-wheel drive. And on the 12.3-inch gauge cluster here, it will display in real time exactly where the torque is being sent, so that's kind of fun. In the rear-wheel drive version, 225 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, and that gets you the most range, 581 kilometers. We'll see how that stacks up against the competition in a second here. Or you can spec all-wheel drive with the bigger wheels, the 20-inch wheels, as we do have here, versus the base model's 18s, and that'll bring your range down to 434 kilometers, which is still pretty good. But with the all-wheel drive, of course, you have two electric motors versus one, so the power is bumped up to 320 horsepower, torque is at 446. Plenty of torque. This is not to the level of the Kia EV6 or the Genesis GV60, which both have well over 500 pound-feet of torque. This is still plenty of torque here. We just get instantaneous torque. This is more power, more torque than any normal person would ever need. This is exactly what you need, nothing more. But it is worthy to note here that the base model Polestar 2 has a little bit more power than this. No adjustable suspension here, no mag ride, no adaptive suspension. Base price here, $55,000 Canadian. Add a few $1,000s onto that for the all-wheel drive, and then as tested with the Ultimate package, $6,000 takes it up to $65,000 Canadian. One of the reasons the base model rear-wheel drive gets a lot better range is the fact that there are 18s on that vehicle. This one's got 20s, which drastically reduce range. Funny enough, these wheels do not look good at all, as I've stated with a lot of Hyundai and Kia wheels. All right, what does it feel like from a dig? Let's go. Kind of tapers off around 60 kilometers an hour. Now, as far as handling goes, it's buttoned down, it's comfortable, it doesn't float over a lot of the smaller stuff. A lot of that feedback does still come through the steering wheel here. You do get a little bit of feedback, and the power delivery is smooth. Definitely feels rear biased here, and we can see that as well on that all-wheel drive torque delivery screen there, but you can feel it wanted to get a little bit sideways there. But it'll rotate nice. You know, you can absolutely unbalance it, and in fact, I find it a lot easier. Oh, like that bump definitely upset the car a little bit more than the i4. Okay, this is the big elephant in the room. What does this remind you of? You know, I joked about it, mentioned it briefly in the intro. The Infiniti J30. I figured out the rear end. While there are a lot of cues from other cars here, namely from a profile here, does this not remind you of the CLS? The Mercedes CLS kind of has that sloped back look. The rear end, this is Infiniti J30. Now I know the J30 does not have this ridiculous double wing, of course, for function. It's here for function, I promise you. It's not to stare at for long periods of time, although I haven't really figured out what it's for. Besides that, it's very interesting to me because Hyundai has taken crazy risks in design recently. Of course, the origami of the IONIQ 5 looks nothing like the rest of the Hyundai lineup, neither does this. So it's kind of interesting to me, while BMW, of course, has the kidney grille that they've now elongated to extreme lengths, because that's what, based on the previous decades of design DNA, they have to work with. Here at Hyundai, they have ditched, surprisingly enough, they've taken a huge risk here and ditched the front grille of most of their vehicles. The Elantra, the Sonata, angle in towards the center. They've ditched that on the IONIQ series of vehicles. Because yes, this is a very rounded off vehicle. There's curves everywhere, but it's juxtaposed with all of these squares that you'll find everywhere. They have hard edges. I actually have no idea what this little square in the rear bumper is. Don't even want to know. And then you've got these vertical lines, gray lines here with a bunch of other LEDs, and that houses part of your reverse lights as well. So very interesting design here. Do I love it? No. Do I hate it? No. The front end looks decent to me, but let's head on over onto the interior and see what's up. Ow, oh my God. Oh. That was genuine, if you're wondering. I was just about to say, actually, that the sloped back hasn't truly affected the rear headroom as much as I would have expected until that moment right there. Now I'm having second thoughts. Aside from that, let's just ignore that. An exorbitant, a huge amount of rear leg room here, so much so, which I'm really happy to report. But that does come at a sacrifice, because compared to the competition, the Model 3, the Polestar 2, and of course, the BMW i4 eDrive 35, it does sacrifice on cargo space compared to those vehicles. But the floor, they've done a pretty good job here at keeping it as low as possible, because that is an uphill battle here in the EV realm, because that's where the batteries go. One of the strangest things I've found about the IONIQ 6 and how it's been designed is the fact that there is no Hyundai badges on the interior. It's nowhere to be found, which I found a little bit strange. There's just 4 dots on the steering wheel that change colors when you change drive modes. When you're charging the vehicle, they light up and kind of show you I guess in 25% increments how charged the battery is, and they're just trying to separate it that much more from what? I'm not sure. They don't really have a specific direction in design of the IONIQ brand. The 5 and the 6 look like they were made by different manufacturers. Of course, the infotainment, we've got two 12.3-inch touchscreen displays here. Steering wheel itself is great. Leather wrapped here. Of course, you do have your paddle shifters on either side for your regen braking settings. Down here, this is where you hit park, drive, reverse, and neutral. I really didn't like it when I first got in. I love it now, so it's really grown on me. It allows, in the center console here, it allows a lot more space for 2 cup holders. You've got wireless charging here, 1 USB port, and of course, because the doors here are very minimalist, very sparse, but of course that leaves the question, hey, where are my window controls gonna be? They are right here in the center. Like a lot of European cars, it works. Takes a little bit to get used to, of course, if you're not familiar with that. Other than that, it works fairly well here. Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, of course, are standard. They're not wireless, though. That's a huge miss for the IONIQ 6. I'm not sure how Hyundai didn't bring that into the conversation, haven't made that work, but that is a thing here. Seats are comfortable. You cannot spec leather, even though this vehicle I'm sitting in today is $64,000 Canadian. You are not able to spec leather. This is a leatherette surface. With the standard car, you don't get a power passenger seat. You only get a power driver seat. That is worthy to know. And of course, because this doesn't have a traditional transverse mounted front wheel drive setup with an internal combustion engine, we do have an incredible amount of space down here. One thing you may note here on the interior are these kind of wings that come out from the dashboard. It appears as if the dashboard itself could almost come backwards and forwards, like some kind of concept car. What this actually is, in other markets aside from North America, you're able to spec the IONIQ series of vehicles with, instead of rear view mirrors, they have cameras there and then a screen right here on these wings that displays what's behind you. I'm so glad we don't have that here. The rear end, I really wish they would have just made this a hatch, and maybe it ditched the rear wing and sacrificed a little bit of that aerodynamics, or even still if they didn't, just to create a bigger cargo opening back there. And I feel like that's why this, compared to the Polestar and the Tesla Model 3, doesn't have as much cargo space, is because that opening is so shallow. It's very, very short. It is long. It does go pretty far up to the backs of the rear seats, but it just doesn't have that deep cargo area. I mean, what is the IONIQ 6's goal here? It really is to outlast the competition, the Polestar 2, the Tesla Model 3, and of course the BMW i4 eDrive 35. I've driven the eDrive 40. I have not driven a Polestar 2 or a Tesla Model 3. In fact, I have not driven a Tesla in 8 years, since the original P85D that I reviewed. But that's the competition. Now, interestingly enough, in Canada at least, you are not able to spec the IONIQ 6 with a smaller battery than the 77.4 kilowatt hour battery that's in all versions, regardless of if the vehicle is rear wheel drive or all wheel drive, which I like. I really appreciate that, because that's how Hyundai is able to make their rear wheel drive only model get to 581 kilometers EPA estimated range, which is about 360 miles. That's impressive. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been the IONIQ 6, a very strange looking vehicle. Please let me know in the comments below what you think this looks like. I feel like also in the front end it has a little bit of Fiat Coupe in it. Tell me if you guys agree or not. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit me up on Instagram at Roads Untraveled. I'm driving a few very exciting things coming up. I'll be in a 992 911 finally, and then as well a manual Golf R Mark 8, which should be exciting as well. We'll see you soon.